Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Ben, and here in Canada, we're theoretically going to get to elect our next Prime Minister. With the way our neighbors to the south have been moving, I guess nothing is ever certain. But I guess we're just one step closer to the Fallout timeline, which, shout out to the Fallout TV show. Fantastic. Oh my God, I just love everything about that show. The props, the acting, the the setting. Oh, fantastic. Just absolutely incredible. But in any case, we're theoretically going to be electing our next prime minister in about 3 years now. We're about a year into the Carney regime, and everybody, especially after his Davos speech, just fucking loves him, right? So, right now, we're in the process of deciding who will be wearing the orange tie on the debate stage in the next election cycle. For those of you who are unaware, the orange tie will be on the neck of the leader of the NDP, or the New Democratic Party in Canada. And for those of you unaware of the NDP's policies, they're sort of a general left of center, um, theoretically a labor party. They, at least historically, have been a little further left, leaning more into like left wing populism and generally trying to be like a more progressive force, especially than the liberals. But in the last couple of elections, they've been part of like a governing coalition between the federal liberals and themselves, where basically they're just kind of doing whatever the liberals want them to do. For a party that claims to be for the workers, they sold out labor movements on multiple different occasions in the last few years. At times where they could have put their necks on the line for laborers, they basically chickened out and kind of just let the liberals walk all over strikes. But that's okay, I guess, because as I said before, it's finally time for a change. In the last election, Jagmeet Singh, the former leader of the NDP, lost his seat and basically resigned. So now we get to elect a new person. Currently, there are 5 individuals in the race. 3 of them are sort of standout frontrunners. The 3 frontrunners are named Avi Lewis, Rob Ashton, and Heather McPherson. And these guys kind of all range in their political beliefs, with Heather McPherson being more the establishment candidate who's very much closer to the political center and a liberal, effectively, whereas Avi Lewis is sort of more on the furthest left of the spectrum. I honestly, if it was 2 months ago, I would not give a shit about who was running for the leader of the NDP. I've historically not been super impressed with their work because, at least historically, in my lifetime, have been a bit of a feckless party, to say the least, that doesn't mobilize well, doesn't organize well, doesn't have very consistent or good messaging. But a couple weeks ago, I got an email from the Avi Lewis campaign. I said, what the hell? I'll check out what he's running for just so I have sort of an idea of what's going on in that sphere of politics right now. So I click the link in the email. I go to his website. Immediately, I'm impressed. The UI of his website is phenomenal, incredibly well crafted. There are very few political campaigns out there with this much swagger straight out the gate. Then you get to his policies, and let me tell you, I just about shed a tear. Holy shit. Okay? Obviously, he's not like a revolutionary communist or something, right? Obviously, he's still playing within the framework of liberal democracy, which some people have a problem with, but I tell you, he is moving shit in the right direction. So I'm reading through, and basically I'm immediately hit with, this guy is just like Zohran Mamdani, which I'm sure we've all heard of Zohran Mamdani by now, but the recently elected New York mayor doing numbers right now. Every time I see anything about him, he's fulfilled a new campaign promise or he's done something pretty wonderful, right? Really making a positive impact in the lives of working class people. Avi Lewis, of course, he knows which way the wind's blowing, right? When it comes to those sort of policies. So he's basically got the whole Mamdani platform. Free public transit, public grocery stores, public housing and rent control, and as well as like free childcare, right? While these sort of social democratic reforms that they're doing in New York are amazing, and they are actively and will be making massive improvements in people's day-to-day lives. The Avi Lewis campaign doesn't just stop there. They've got a multitude of additional ideas, and they're just like banger after banger after banger. This is super exciting. From stuff like democratizing the workplace, fighting back against AI, guaranteeing that all federal services will be provided by a human being instead of a chat bot, right? They want to actively expand workers' rights in gig work sectors. So that's like Uber Eats, DoorDash, Lyft, you know. They want to expand EI so that people who are out of work will still have all the supports they need to get by, right? His housing policy is even more expansive than what we're seeing in New York, where he wants to not only, of course, cap rents, institute maximums on how much rents can increase year over year, limiting them to the rate of inflation, which is pretty dope. Uh, this sort of stuff would prevent what we've seen in cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. In Montreal, since 2019, rents have increased by 71%. That's fucking nuts, okay? But that sort of thing wouldn't happen under the Avi Lewis regime. Basically, every step that he wants to take in housing is in an effort to essentially decommodify it. He wants to build over 1 million public homes, which is spectacular, and that like an actual long-term solution to the housing crisis and to the just astronomical cost of housing in this country. He wants to work with local and provincial governments to ensure that supportive housing is provided to as many people as possible, trying to end homelessness, get these people off the streets and into a supportive living environment where they're actually being set up for success, right? Instead of just the sort of poorly funded, decrepit social housing programs that we have right now. And he wants to work with indigenous communities to ensure that, believe it or not, that every person in those communities has dignified, high quality housing. You know, wouldn't it be nice if in this first world country, quote unquote, we had our indigenous populations properly housed and taken care of? We're living on their land. The least we could do is give them somewhere nice to live. Now, you might be thinking, workers' rights, housing. I mean, come on, anybody can do that, right? Well, have I got a treat for you? Because that's not even the half of his policies. He's got a whole whack load on healthcare, which, if you know anything about me, you know I love my public healthcare, and pretty much everybody in Canada does. Um, Unfortunately, I live in the most evil province. His biggest healthcare policy is head to toe coverage through the Canadian Medicare. But what this means is not just your run of the mill doctor's visits and testing and surgeries, but also mental health care, eye care, dental care, and drug coverage. These policies already exist elsewhere, but never before seen here. Among other things relating to healthcare, he wants to create a public drug manufacturer, which would cut costs in providing full drug coverage, as you'd be able to source a cheap generic version of drugs that are not like for profit necessarily, as well as it would prevent stuff like this thing called orphan drugs, where a drug is deemed unprofitable to produce because there's not a large enough market for it and is just not made, even though there are people who still need it. But he just keeps going. We can't stop winning with him. When it comes to environmental policy, he's still just knocking it out of the park. He wants to, first of all, create as many jobs as possible in the process of transitioning away from fossil fuels. I was lucky enough to go to an actual event where he spoke, and that was something that he wanted to stress as incredibly important, is that in his green transition of the economy, people, especially here in Alberta, where our economy is based entirely around oil and gas, would not be left behind. And that a government led by him would actually establish the means to train people to move away from the oil and gas industry and to create as many jobs as possible in new renewable sectors. That's something that I really appreciated about him, actually, was that he really wanted to make sure that nobody felt like they would be left behind in the move into the future. He really included everybody. And one of my friends who is a tradesman was there with us, and he felt very, I guess, very seen by Avi's policies, which is something that's not altogether common for tradesmen in this country and especially this province. And I know that everybody's at a very Chinese time in their life. So am I, of course. So it brings me more pleasure than you know to say that Avi has a policy to bring high-speed rail to Canada. Oh my God, that's so exciting. The things I would do for fast and free high-speed rail. The great thing is that he wants to make all public transit free in the entire country and build out a big network of course, rail, electric buses, and work with municipalities to make sure that their public transit systems are in good shape. He comes from one of the only cities in this country to have like a pretty robust public transit system, which is Vancouver. An Alberta boy such as myself would appreciate a federal government that actually works on bringing me some useful fucking public transit. He wants to massively expand our energy grid with solar, wind, and geothermal projects. And these projects would, of course, also create tons of jobs, and a lot of them sort of in the same realm as what the oil and gas industry workers would be doing, and would be like a relatively easy transition over. He wants to put heat pumps in every home across the country, which would again be a massive industry that would create tons of unionized jobs in the trades. And of course, heat pumps are energy efficient. They're a good way of cooling and heating your home, especially in like our rampant forest fire seasons where outside is just like clouds of smoke. These can cool your home without taking in air from the outside like a traditional AC system. All in all, incredible idea. And if you, like Trump voters, are begging,
please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I'm sorry, but we just keep winning. Because all of these industries that need to be built out are, at least ideally in his eyes, going to be built out by public sector jobs, which I know that not everybody's a fan of the government and the inefficiencies of the bureaucracy and whatnot, but I don't think anybody can argue that government jobs are one of the last remaining high-quality sources of employment pretty much anywhere in the country. So the massive public sector build-out will, again, create tons of jobs, which cannot come soon enough. We are dying out here, especially us, like the youth. I think the youth unemployment rate is like 40% or something. And every time I go to the grocery store, it's fucking more expensive somehow. And now, every time I go to the grocery store, I just think, oh, somebody could do something about this. Of course, Avi has a plan for that too. With the public grocery stores that are theoretically getting built in New York, Avi wants to, like any reasonable person would, copy that policy and build some here. These will bring down grocery prices by up to like 40%. And if that's the case, can we get them now? I know everybody jokes about Mark's Carney, but he's not really delivering on his title. That's not the only public business that Avi wants to build out. He wants to also build out public telecom. That's incredibly exciting because I didn't even know this until the event that I went to. But I guess we have the highest telecom prices in the world. I think he said close to 1,000 times more expensive than Finland. That's wild. I can't even begin to describe what I would do if left in a room alone with the CEO of Rogers. But anyways, so then the last policy that I'm going to go through today is he actually wants to reestablish postal banking in this country. I actually had to look up what postal banking was because I didn't know at all. But it's basically the post office becomes a bank and post office. You can do all your banking through the mail. I would have to imagine that they would sort of digitize part of the process to bring us into the modern era. But it would effectively create an alternative to the 5 big banks in Canada that sort of dominate the banking landscape and drive up costs and make record profits every year. It's disgusting how much money these banks make. So in Canada, we've had it We had it up until, I think, 1968 or something like that, when they disassembled the postal banking apparatus in the country and have obviously never brought it back. But at a time when everybody is super concerned about the profitability of Canada Post, which, I mean, it's a service, it's not a business. Like the fire department isn't for profit. I don't know why we're so concerned that our postal delivery service is. But either way, in countries where postal banking is still a thing, like in New Zealand, the postal banking system makes up 80% of their postal service's revenue, which is crazy and could easily compensate for whatever revenues are being lost in the Canada Post Service. That's a pretty outstanding way to sort of round off the policy agenda. Everyone will be very disappointed that Avi is not going to bring Sharia to the entire country like Mamdani is to New York. And I mean, we're all very disappointed. Some sacrifices have to be made in the pursuit of progress, I guess. At least, hopefully, it's comfort for you guys to know that, like Mamdani, Avi has a very incredibly talented wife who some of you may know is Naomi Klein, which is just mind blowing. I personally loved The Shock Doctrine. That was a wonderful book. And I was super excited when I found out that they were like, the woke power couple. So if all of this sounds really exciting to you, you're in luck because you still have a few more days, at least at the time this video is released, to get your membership to the NDP, maybe even donate a little to the Avi Lewis campaign, which has just smashed fundraising records for the NDP. Super exciting stuff. I think they've cracked $800,000 raised, but hey, they can always have more. So if you want to donate, head to lewisforleader.ca. There you can see his sexy web design for his campaign. You can donate, you can become a member of the NDP, and then in a few months, when they finally do the actual election, you'll be ready to vote for Avi Lewis because it's finally a Canadian politician that you can be excited for, that will actually shake up the status quo and benefit you as a member of the working class. So once again, Avi Lewis, lewisforleader.ca, check him out, volunteer, donate, become a member of the NDP, and vote for him when the election comes around here. And if you're still with me to the end of this video, thank you so much. I hope you're as excited as I am. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe, the whole deal. Let me know what kind of stuff you want to see in the future. And thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day.